evening. My name is Jason Greenspan. I'm the Community Development Director here in the city of Bothell. We have one of our nicest evenings, so thank you for taking time on this beautiful evening to spend a couple hours in City Hall. I'm just going to be doing a little bit of housekeeping up front. Is there anybody here this evening that needs translation or interpretation services for Mandarin, Chinese, Spanish? Please raise your hand if you do, and we can make an accommodation for you. Nobody. Okay. And anybody that is new to City Hall, we have restrooms right out in the hallway, and we have exits right here. So we're in education mode this evening when it comes to middle housing. And thank you for coming to our community forum. This is the first forum that we're having on middle housing. We want to listen to you. We want to listen to opportunities and challenges that you can identify for us as we listen in breakout groups that we're going to have after a presentation that Dave is going to make this evening on middle housing. You probably see some of the images that have been scrolling in the hallway or in this room tonight. We're hoping to give some education and also learn from you. Dave Boyd is a senior planner with the city. We also have other community development staff here this evening to answer questions and to engage with you. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Dave, who will get into a presentation on middle housing.
Thanks, Jason. And there are still some seats up here in front, and you can also sit at one of the chairs around the tables on either side of the room. So come on in. It's great to see such a good turnout tonight. So we're here tonight because we want your input. We want to hear from the Bothell community about their housing needs, and specifically tonight about their concerns and interests about middle housing. We want to hear about your current and future housing needs, and then as we get into a little more description of what middle housing is, for those of you who might not have been following this discussion, get your thoughts on that. So the agenda, we're going to do about a 20-minute presentation. I'm going to do some introductions as part of that. Then we're going to break into small groups. And we have 7 areas for small group discussions, and I'm going to introduce some of the city staff that is going to be helping facilitate and take notes. City staff and consultants that are going to be helping facilitate and take notes. So Jason Greenspan already introduced himself. Mandy Roberts from OTAC, our lead consultant on this project. Olivia Nelson. One of our planners, development review planners, Kirsten Mont, one of our long-range planners, Nick Schmeck, another development review planner, Leanne Ryan with Eco Northwest, our economic consultant, Sarah Frost, our community engagement specialist, Ashley Winchell, passing out numbers in the back. That's for the small group exercises. I'm feeling I've missed somebody. Eva Ho from, Sierra Carson from OTAC. Raquel Rodriguez from ARCH. Eva Ho from OTAC. And Mike Stanger also from ARCH, a regional coalition for housing, who act as our housing staff, our housing experts. And then after we do the small group discussion, we're going to gather back here and have each small group assign somebody to report back and tell the whole group about their small group discussion. So what's middle housing? The simplest way to describe it is it's house scale, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, cottage and courtyard housing on larger lots, and accessory dwelling units. Those are all in part of what we're considering in these middle housing amendments. The middle is because it's in the middle between detached one-family homes and multifamily apartments. It's also in the middle in terms of affordability. Generally, the idea is that middle housing is more affordable than single-family housing, probably more expensive than your typical apartments, but there are also always exceptions to the rule. We're doing this to provide more choices, more options for housing for folks that want to live in Bothell, and doing it all with good design and with a good location in mind. So there are provisions in both the state rules and the city rules to encourage more of this near transit. And it's intended to be compatible with existing neighborhoods. So like I said at the beginning, these are house scale buildings. So the scale of the structures will be the same as what you could build as a single family home. So a number of different types of housing, starting with duplexes. And here we have examples, both diagrams that show these examples, these layouts with either a driveway from the street or alley access, and then some more traditional examples, along with more modern examples. One reason for showing the more traditional ones is that these were allowed at one point before we had widespread exclusive single-family zoning in the country. And you'll see in neighborhoods like Lower Maywood a mixture of duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, and single-family homes. Triplexes. So those can be, both of these examples, both the modern and the traditional one, are what we call stacked flats, where each floor is an apartment. But those could also be arranged in a townhouse type format or other ways. Fourplexes. Here we have a traditional fourplex that's 2 units over 2 units, and then a more modern fourplex that's arranged as a row of townhouses. It also can be cottage housing, and here we have some examples of smaller detached units organized around a common court, and generally with parking separated from the actual dwelling unit. Or it could be courtyard housing. Both cottages and courtyard housing would be appropriate on larger lots. Courtyard housing could be in a C shape, as shown here in the diagram, or in an L shape on a corner. And the idea is that the ends of those, the C or the L, approximate the scale of a single family house. So again, as you go on the street, it has a similar character to the individual homes on the street. As I said before, both the Planning Commission recommendation and the state legislation that was recently passed allow one attached and one detached accessory dwelling unit on a lot with a detached primary dwelling unit. And also, they allow one ADU on a middle housing lot. So here's just some examples in the diagram in the lower right, several examples of different ways that you can have a single ADU with a house. And we also have here some examples. The lower photograph here is an existing house where they've built an attached accessory dwelling unit right on the back side, the white tower element with some black siding, and then beyond that, a detached accessory dwelling unit, all on a larger lot. It was a lot that was not quite big enough to subdivide, so this provided an opportunity for them to create 3 dwelling units where there was once one. Or it could be in a townhouse configuration like the modern example in the upper picture. And that's on a lot that would be similar to many of our single-family lots in our 7200 through our 9600 zoning. So why are we looking at middle housing? First of all, Bothel's comprehensive plan since 2015 has called for a wider array of options for housing within Bothell, and that was reinforced in the housing strategy that was last updated in 2018. Plus, the projections are that the state needs about 1.1 million new homes in the next 20 years. If you project that to Bothell just on a population of the state compared to Bothell, that's about 6,000 homes in Bothell over that time period. And the state, through the Department of Commerce, has been promoting middle housing as a key strategy to meet that. And we've received 3 grants to do this work to explore middle housing. I'm going to provide an opportunity for questions at the end. And the legislature just passed legislation requiring cities like Bothell to provide middle housing options. So we need to act whether we move forward with the Planning Commission recommendation or shift and do something more in line with what the state has indicated. It's not a question of if, but exactly how and when at this point. So here's where we are on the overall schedule. And actually, we started working on this back in 2019 when we looked at corner lot duplexes and actually adopted. We currently allow corner lot duplexes throughout the residential zones in the city. But when that was passed, when Planning Commission made its recommendation and Council adopted those regulations, both bodies indicated that they wanted to see more options of middle housing. So in 2021, we started that process in earnest with the Planning Commission. It got additional direction from City Council at the start of 2022 in the planning docket. We've done a number of outreach efforts through walking tours in the Lower Maywood neighborhood. We did a community forum last May and a survey. And in October, Planning Commission made a recommendation for code amendments. And we've continued to do the walking tours as an outreach effort. City Council has started its review in the early part of this year. They've had study sessions in January, February, and March. Planning Commission is looking at comprehensive plan amendments to accompany the code amendments. And tonight we're having this community forum. We did a citywide mailer, and we're going to launch another survey tonight. So that'll be another opportunity for community input. And then it'll go back to council for their review and a public hearing in July. Study session in June and public hearing in July. So community engagement, I mentioned the walking tours. We ended those walking tours with listening sessions to hear people's thoughts about middle housing after they've seen some examples. The May 2022 community forum wasn't as successful as this. We didn't have quite as many people, but so we're really happy to see this turnout tonight. And we're also the Council and Planning Commission meetings are opportunities for public input. And we've gotten quite a bit of both written and oral testimony in those forums. We're also doing outreach to community-based organizations, working with Arch and other East Side communities. And if there is any interest in other language interpretations of surveys, we're translating ours into Spanish and simplified Chinese, but there are more opportunities and more languages available in a different survey that's being done through that effort. So I talked about the recent legislation. Just in the last two and a half weeks, the legislature has passed two bills. House Bill 1110 requires middle housing for most communities in the state. Definitely Bothell will be required to provide at least duplexes, fourplexes within a quarter mile of frequent transit. The House Bill 1337 will allow 2 ADUs per lot with a detached primary dwelling unit. And it also limits restrictions like owner occupancy and also design restrictions that go beyond what is required for other housing. So moving forward, and here's a very simplified comparison of what the state legislation requires and what the Planning Commission has recommended. So both are looking to allow accessory dwelling units, 2 units per lot in citywide in residential zones. Both would allow duplexes citywide. The state allows up to 4plexes outside of that quarter mile radius if one is affordable. That's a little bit different than the Planning Commission recommendation, which focused on larger developments, subdivisions, and giving a bonus that could be met with a mix of middle housing, and then a affordability requirement that 10% of those units that get that bonus, or those developments that get that bonus, would have to have 10% of the overall units affordable, contractually affordable. and both allow for courtyard and cottage housing. So those bills just came down. They're still awaiting the governor's signature. We're still awaiting guidance from the State Department of Commerce. So in the meantime, we're analyzing those, and we'll be coming back to Planning Commission and City Council with that analysis in the next month or two. The compliance deadline for the state rules is July of 2025, but Council has indicated an interest. Our marching orders are try to bring something back to them for adoption before the August break.
What does marching orders mean, Dave?
The direction that Council has given to staff.
What does that have
so-
to do with signing?
I'll take some questions at the end, sir.
No, it's
so-
not a public comment issue. This is a forum.
And
Parliamentary procedure, I get to ask a question.
well, I'll take questions at the end, clarifying questions, and then we're looking for most of the discussion to happen at the small groups. So if you can just hold off for a minute, I'm almost done.
May I say something, please? I think I understand what
Is that legal?
gentleman is referring
Is that
to. It's
legal?
very difficult to listen
Is that legal?
and know what
In
your
small
question
groups,
is and
is
then
small
wait 30,
groups
40 minutes and then try to make it come together.
Okay, understood.
That's why he's interrupting you, and I don't blame him, because I've been over here trying to keep a lid on it for the whole time.
Okay. So, a quick question? Clarifying question? Not a comment, a question.
It's my understanding, listening to Sarah Frost at the last Bothell Planning Commission meeting, that we have signed a grant which we have to meet contractual obligations as a city before there's any engagement or any vote. Is this true
No.
or not? It's a yes or no question.
That's not accurate. I expect that what Sarah may have said might have been misinterpreted, but we have grants from the State Department of Commerce to do this work. We need.
What are our obligations contractually?
Would you please let me finish?
No.
Yes.
What are our, what is the?
I am trying to answer your question, and
That's a simple question.
okay.
That's a simple.
We have a number of deliverables that we have to produce. We have to do a report
We
on.
signed a contract.
I will let you know when I'm finished, okay? One deliverable is a report on racial equity and anti-displacement options. One deliverable is a report on market analysis, exploring the feasibility of these, and that'll also be part of the displacement analysis. We do not have to produce actual code amendments or plan amendments as part of the grant, but we have to show progress towards doing that and a path towards doing that. That we need to provide by the end of June. And as another deliverable of the grant is the community outreach.
Obligating us. The city has signed a contract. It's just a simple question.
The only obligation we have is to produce those reports. We don't have any obligation under this contract to actually pass any plan or code amendments. The direction we've gotten from council is to work towards that, but we will have, if council decides to wait, have until July 1925 to actually comply with the new state rules. So let me finish my presentation. Here are a few issues that we are dealing with in this. So affordability and attainable housing. So a small number of the units would be contractually affordable, but the idea is that these will be smaller units than the typical new single-family homes that get built, so they will be more attainable. And so this is a rough diagram of where apartments are generally where most of the truly affordable housing can be provided. Accessory dwelling units kind of fill that the lower middle ground. Middle housing is in the middle, and then single family housing towards the upper end. Oh, actually, a couple important things I wanted to bring up. One concern that's been raised has been about utilities and infrastructure, whether that's adequate. We've been working with our Public Works Department on both of those, and the response we've gotten is that what's being proposed, we have the capacity to serve that. And our Public Works Department is doing a fee study. They're going to have an initial council study session on the fee study on June 6th. And they'll be looking at specialized fees for middle housing and accessory dwelling units as part of that study. And then we're doing the market analysis, as I said, that will include the displacement analysis and tax impacts. That's another question that's been raised. So we'll have more information on that as that work is done. So tonight's program, the idea is that the discussion we wanted to have around tables in small groups rather than in this big room. Those streaming live on BCTV will be able to do the online survey during the break. There's a QR code on the screen that you can capture, and that'll take you to the survey. We do have some hard copies of the survey. I'll get to you in a minute, ma'am. But we would really prefer that you take it online if you're able to do that. Question?
I was gonna say, is there any way we take a vote and decide whether we wanna break into small groups or continue to have like a general discussion? Because now you have a bunch of groups, I don't know how many y'all are planning on, but when you do that, I don't usually leave each group, so it's not gonna obviously be you because you can only be one person, and I don't know who it's gonna be, so then I feel like we're gonna have 15 different little conversations and that's that could just be me.
Well, and that's why we're going to report back at the end, and there'll be an opportunity for some group discussion at the end. So that's how we've set this up tonight. We've found that the small group discussions are generally more conducive and
Who's leading the group if I have questions like, could we revisit the developers bonus that they get for Lola? They're gonna understand that information, be able to tell us.
I and perhaps a couple of other staff are going to be floating between the small groups, so we'll be able to answer some of those questions if the facilitators aren't able to do that. I'm going to go to the back here.
One affordable unit.
Yes, the state legislation calls for, allows up to fourplexes outside of the quarter-mile radius from transit if one of the units is affordable. That is generally defined, in our code, generally defined as for ownership housing at 80% of the area mean, for households earning 80% of the area median income, or for rentals for households earning 60% of the area median income. But that's one detail that we really need to analyze a little bit more in terms of exactly what the state legislation is going to require. Yeah. Median. Yeah. Yes, that should be median income, and it's the King County median income.
From a planning perspective, how do you define transit corridor? Where is that in your area?
So,
I'm
yeah.
asking because of the one development with the infamous 5-story project was cited as being really close to transit. That's really up a hill and down. So I was just curious how, from a planning perspective, where's the boundary of transit?
So in our city code, depending on the type of housing, it's a quarter or a half-mile radius. In most cases, half-mile, but for senior housing, it's a quarter-mile radius from frequent transit, which is transit that has a stop every at least 4 stops an hour for a major part of the day. So in Bothell, that's going to be mostly along the express lines and the new BRT line. The state law is a quarter-mile walking distance from major transit, and that may vary slightly as it's defined from as we've defined it to date. So, yeah, Ann?
Do you have a date for the market analysis to be public, and will that be done before the survey due?
No, it won't be done before the survey that closes. I'm going to take one more question, and then we're going to break into the small groups.
Or the market analysis available to the public yet?
Not yet. We've only received some of the very preliminary analysis ourselves so far. Yeah, one more question.
Yes or no question here. I doubt if you limit yourself to this. But at the Bothell City Council meeting joint with the North Shore School District, Jason Greenspan projected that the Bothell population will be 75,000. I think he meant to say 74,000, because that's what comes from the state, not 75. But I think he meant to say 74. When I did the analysis, by 2044, because of the cascading requirements from Washington, D.C. to Olympia down to us, they're projected to have a 74,000 population in Bothell in 2044, which represents an 8% simple annum growth rate per year for 21 years, from 48,000 to 74,000. What is going to be left of your neighborhoods? Now, why, no, wait a minute, I'm not done with my question.
Come to a question quickly, please.
Why quickly?
Because we're at time for the small group.
Forum?
We're at time for the small.
There's no Robert's rules in the speed of my question.
If you'd like to.
Bottom line is that we are growing at 8 times the population rate, growth rate, of the Brookings Institute analysis of the last U.S. Census. That's what they're doing to us. 60 times the population growth rate, and they do it unapologetically. Could you answer me why we are growing at 60 times the U.S. population growth rate here in Boston?
I guess the answer to that would be no, if it has to be a yes or no question. So that's not, I don't think that's accurate. I'm going to turn it over to Ashley Winchell. She's going to do the small group assignments.
So everyone got a number when they came in. If you didn't, we'll get you a number. We're breaking up into small groups because we want to have conversations with all of you. We're going to be taking notes. We're going to report back. And then all of this information will go into a report that'll help City Council make decisions about how to handle middle housing moving forward. So if you don't have a note card, or with a number on it, can you raise your hand? Okay. Sierra is going to bring you a note card. So table 1, Jason is in the back. He's got a pink piece of paper that says 1. You all are going to room 108. Table 2 is with Sierra. So Sierra's right here. Folks at table 2, we've got a table set up for you in the lobby. So you'll just go out this door to the lobby with Sierra. Table 3 is with Kirsten and Nick. Nick is very tall, so he's almost touching the ceiling back here with 3. So go with Nick to table 107. If you're with table 4, that's me. So I'm in room 127, so once I'm done kind of air traffic controlling. You can follow me. 5 was Mandy at this table in council chambers, so you don't have too far to go. 6 is with Leanne, who's going into room 101 over here. And then 7 is with Mike, who is over here in council chambers. All right. Everyone good? Anyone need? Okay.
it is time to reconvene. So wrap up the discussions. If folks can reconvene in council chambers, take a seat, and we can, if we get through the report back, we'll have a little bit of time for some more informal discussion at the end. Can I ask the city staff facilitators to round up the folks? I heard some really good discussions going on in the small group, so we always hate to break them up when there's good discussion going on, but we do have a time limit here. I'd also like to encourage folks, if they didn't feel like they got their chance to get their comments in, or all of their comments in, please do email us at imaginebothel@bothel.gov. It's on the handout and on the website. And you can email me directly too, david.boyd@bothelwa.gov. I know there are more people lingering out there in the lobby or other areas, but I think we should go ahead and get started. Mandy, can I call on your table? Do you have somebody prepared to report out? So, and if come out to the podium here. Otherwise,
And I'll fill in some details.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. That's great to see a lot of people from Bothell and so active, and a lot of young people shaping the future of Bothell. So our group was a mix of newcomers and younger people and old-timers like myself. So we kind of two different 2 points of the area. So people that they realize that they cannot afford it because of the income, and some of us that we come to Bothell a long time ago, and we have a totally different situation. So pretty much the main thing that we discussed was the people didn't understand why we need to grow here in Bothell, which has to do with the Growth Management Act. So we need to meet densities, have to do with traffic. So we talk about that. People are concerned about losing the character of Bothell. I mean, we used to have trees, woodpeckers, waking up, deer, mapuches, and possums. So I think most of us in our table missing that feeling. However, we all agree, a lot of folks think about their families and stay here in Bothell and preserving the character. The other thing that they were concerned was about the trees coming down, the flora, how additional runoff water might impact species. Then also there's a lot of concern about climate change. We're cutting trees, more asphalt coming in. So we need to come up with some sort of balance about, our kids, younger people need houses, but again, we're facing climate change. So, and again, more in previous areas, more CO, et cetera. Anything else?
Well, what you talked about the end about people aging.
Oh, okay. Okay. Well, the other thing, too, that we talk about, and they are close to me, because my daughter Teresa, is about accessibility. We are building, I know that we need to build for the future, for the kids, for the newcomers, to be affordable, but we also need to keep all our, because we're not getting any younger, we live longer, so we need accessible sidewalks, accessible houses. Yeah, okay, you can do a middle house, but how many of us can, pretty soon, I don't think pretty soon I'm gonna be able to climb stairs. So yeah, when you do the designs for middle houses or additional, just be sure that those designs are accordingly to our aging population and the needs they are. And also people with special needs using wheelchairs. Because again, we are living longer. And let's do that. And again, let's all work together. This is a really good thing. Thank you for your time, everybody.
Thank you. There are more seats up here in front. If you don't want to sit in front, there are more seats in the back and around this table. And why don't we go to this other table in the council chambers? Do you have somebody to report back?
No, I didn't.
Okay, can you come up to the podium? Or I can give you that.
Just a few quick words to summarize what the takeaways from our group. I think it's fair to say that that they concluded that they're not crazy about 3 or 4 homes on a lot, but they're okay with duplexes. A lot of, the typical concerns that probably had in all other conversations about density, trees, traffic, etc. But that's kind of where the consensus came down, and they would be happier with the conclusion if it was clear that the homes, fit aesthetically in with the existing neighborhood.
Okay, thank you. Jason, how about your group? Do you have somebody assigned to report? Yeah, great. So you can go up to the podium.
Can they face us so we can, I just feel like.
We do have the mic, so
Yeah, absolutely.
Here, how's that?
Oh, perfect. Yeah. Does that work? Perfect. What was the first question?
All right, what do you like about having opportunities?
Oh, yeah. So we had a lot of really good discussion and a lot of, what was the phrase? Seasoned Bothelites in addition to newcomers. And so a lot of different opinions throughout there, and it was a overall pretty healthy discussion that we had. We wanted to see closer proximity to services. One of the upsides to middle housing would be something like that. People are able to live in a more convenient or walkable city, and that was one of the big takeaways pretty consistently through all the questions we were discussing. Some other stuff we'd like to see on top of that would be a more mixed use and more not necessarily commercial, but like services in the deeper neighborhoods as well. It'd be fantastic to have some high density neighborhoods, but if you're still 20 minutes away from anything worth walking to, then it's not as exciting or relevant for everyone. So we overall sounded like a lot of ADUs were very popular. Cottage type housing on larger lots was a big favored among the group that we discussed. And there was some worries and discussions about what duplexes and triplexes would look like in the single family neighborhoods. Hopefully that's something that the market analysis will be able to discuss or clear up for whether or not that's affects people's property value in the future. And I think that's overall everything, unless there was something else important that someone wanted to add. All right, perfect.
covered it, yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, there we go.
thank you. Leanne, how about your group? You had somebody to report out? And we'll stick with the hand mic
Yeah, sure.
so you can face the group.
Okay, so some of the key points that we talked about was just affordability in general. We had some questions about ownership and rental units and whether or not if the new housing is there, if it's going to be renting or if people are going to be buying. Fear of being priced out if they currently own a home, or on the other side of that, given up the ability to purchase a home. Concerns about ability for the city to absorb population growth related to infrastructure and schools, and concern about the loss of horizon and views in Bothell. Some of the things we're wanting to see: sustainability, protect trees, maintain just the community in general, and then want to see new units, or want to see units available for new residents if the city is going to grow.
Great, thank you. Kirsten and Nick, is Kirsten your reporter? Can you do that all?
Yeah, I'm pretty strong. So we had a lot of discussion about tree canopy coverage, wanting to maintain vegetation, both for sense of well-being, for urban heat island effect, which is cooling impacts. We talked a little bit about affordability concerns, people talking about their children that haven't really been able to stay in the community, and that being an unfortunate thing. There was some comments as well about the perception of how much this legislation is actually going to change the community, and some thoughts that they didn't think that was going to be the case. We talked a little bit about how some folks will really like that new housing development does bring frontage improvements and sidewalks for kids in the community to walk around, and how that's a good thing and wanting to maintain that. There were some comments about some concerns about rental units that they've seen and the maintenance of rental units. Actually, maybe I do need some help. Sorry, I need to scroll. There were also some comments about providing intergenerational wealth, sort of as a tack on to the concerns about children of folks not being able to afford to buy in the community. There was a comment about recognizing that we do have middle housing in Bothell and townhomes, and wanting to make sure that we're kind of recognizing that. A lot of concerns about accessibility in these types of housing, so making sure that any new middle housing can be accessible to all folks. And that was kind of the maximum of everything I have down here, so.
Great.
Yeah.
Thanks, good job. Ashley, did you have somebody to report? Are you going to do it? Okay. I think Matthew and Aaron are going to help you.
So our group, definitely one of the things that we really liked about Bothell is that it reminds folks a lot of where they grew up. They really like the feel of Bothell, and I think the word nostalgia came up. We almost ended up talking about Country Village for a very long time. So I think that could have been the theme. Folks liked that their street was quiet. They liked that it was low crime. There was also some folks who wanted to see more development downtown, wanted to see more ground floor retail downtown. There were folks that liked ADUs that were tastefully done. There were concerns about owner occupancy versus rentals. I'm having the same issue as Kirsten here. I think I got it. Some folks liked that there were different levels of housing. And then there were also concerns brought up about whether their kids would be able to afford to live here and whether they could afford a home like the one they grew up in. In terms of liking middle housing, really for some folks depended on where they were. I think there was a pretty strong feeling that they need to fit into the neighborhood. So not necessarily liking some of the modern architecture, but liking things that maybe look like existing houses in the neighborhood. There were some comments about really big houses being built. And so, could a McMansion be 3 units, or could it house more families? But then also concerns about parking if there's more units in the same footprint. And then we talked I think there's a lot of folks who want to be involved in their families' lives in some ways, being close to their family, and some expressing that middle housing could provide that opportunity to live close to your family without living with your family. So I'm sure folks can relate to that. And that is a high-level summary.
Great, thanks. Sarah, I think you are the last group, unless I'm forgetting somebody. Okay, great. Here, try this.
Oh, okay. We'll do this. Hold on.
That you.
Hey. Hello. Our group was in the lobby, and we had most of the people in our group have lived here for a long time. So generations or decades, and they've been here very established. So we talked a lot about what we could do with current housing, what they could do with their existing property, and what that would look like on different sites. So whether it was an ADU or building a duplex out of their current home or adding on to their current home, we spent a lot of time talking about that, the different options, the different proposals, and what that would mean for them as a current homeowner. We also shared some stories about families and friends who can't afford to live here right now, and how middle housing could be an opportunity for that. We had some great questions about how does this affect property taxes? What does this mean for developers and what they're allowed to build going forward? So we talked through some of those situations. And a lot about the flexibility of lots and what's site specific. So whether it was converting an existing home or adding to an existing home. I think I repeated myself, sorry. But that was the gist of it. Ta-da!
Thank you. Those are some great points, great discussion. One recurring theme I heard, I think, in pretty much all of these was concern about losing trees. And one thing I didn't mention in my description of the Planning Commission recommendation is they did hear that concern, and they were interested in allowing some flexibility for middle housing development. And in the end, the recommendation was to allow some flexibility with the setbacks, as long as you didn't increase the overall footprint. So, and as long as it was to save an existing tree or to create a new grove or another natural feature like a rain garden. So you could scooch the whole building towards the street if you had a significant tree in the back that you were able to preserve by that, or you could scooch it back and reduce the backyards somewhat in order to do that. So that was one measure that the Planning Commission took in their recommendation to address the concern about trees. So we are just about at time. I'd just like to thank everybody for coming out. I saw a lot of great discussions as I roamed around. A lot of different viewpoints, which is exactly what we wanted to do here. We wanted to hear from the broad spectrum of the Bothell community. So with that, I will allow, we have time for a couple of comments or closing questions. Can you come up to the, here. Not that you need it.
I'm not going to take a lot of your time because I know you don't want to hear me talk. But I have one salient question. We've heard a lot about engagement. We know that Bothell City is spending a lot of money to engage us. The truth of the matter is they've already signed a contract with deliverables that we know nothing about because they're not open about it publicly. So I don't know what the deliverables are. I don't think you people do either. But I will say this. One certain way to engage the Bothell population, everybody here, is for the Bothell City Council to decide to put this up for a public vote. And they won't, because they know how you're going to vote.
Thank you. I will say that the deliverables are in the contract that the City Council approved on January 17th, so you can find those in the contract. We're not hiding anything here. And the contract that we signed was to do exactly what we're doing here now, to engage the community, to try to find a solution that includes the ability for homeowners to do middle housing with protections for the greater community. So any other, we've got a couple of minutes. Anne?
I'm curious about further public engagement. I see that you're contacting different groups, and obviously there's the Planning Commission and the council. And we got the survey. But are there other opportunities where the public can engage as we go along? I would like to see some kind of a follow-up, perhaps, to this. Yeah.
We'll be reporting on this and the more detailed notes, and that's a great segue into my closing comments. I'm sorry, I know there were some other questions, but I'm happy to answer some questions at the end. Here are some immediate engagement opportunities. This goes back to the Planning Commission on May 17th for a public hearing on the comprehensive plan amendments that they're considering. There'll be a City Council study session on June 13th. And this is all subject to change, but right now we're scheduled for a City Council public hearing on July 11th with potential city action on July 18th. The survey is available online, and I know some of you picked up hard copy, but if you can, it helps us if you can do that online. That'll be open through May 18th. So with that, I just like to thank you all. James, I'll give you, you're very persistent with the hand. So,
I'm James Caniff. I think my whole agenda is Governor Inslee, April 26, signed something where he wants to put a duplex on any existing single resident housing. What Bothell Planning Commission is not telling you is they want to put a fourplex, not what the governor wants, what they want to do. And there's a big difference between a duplex next to you than a fourplex. And that's what frustrates me as a Bothell resident. And nobody's showing you the addendum of what they want to do. The governor wants, middle housing, a duplex, not a fourplex or a triplex. And that was our major discussion at our group, number 7. And I think that's what we're kind of missing from this whole discussion is they didn't show you what the Planning Commission wants to do and what the governor wants to do. They're two different things. And so that's what makes me upset as a Bothell resident. Okay? I mean, I feel like we should do what the governor wants to do after he signs this April 26 bill, okay? I mean, we don't even have a copy of it yet. I mean, but email this young man, Mr. Boyd. He takes your email and then he'll pass it on to the Planning Commission and they'll hear you. If you want to put down that, hey, I don't want a triplex or a fourplex, but I'll do what the governor is, I'd wish all of you to email him that so we can have that and not a triplex and a fourplex next to our house, okay? So everybody please email this young man and he'll email the Planning Commission everything that you email him and put your name and address on it and say thanks. Appreciate your time.
thanks, James. And I didn't mention it, but yeah, you can comment at each of these meetings by email. You can come and testify in person, and this will all go into the public record. The Planning Commission recommendation is out on there. There's nothing hidden. It's available there. It's in their October 5th, 2022 meeting. And just one clarification: the state law does allow fourplexes. It says that we have to allow fourplexes within a quarter mile of transit. But they're and you're right. The Planning Commission, but neither the governor or the Planning Commission are putting these there. This is all up to the private property owners to provide, and private homeowners. So we've heard from several that would like to do some of these types. So with that, we're over time now. I'm happy to take questions after we convene or after we go on. And again, thank you very much for coming out, and we appreciate your input.